I happened to miss this yesterday morning, maybe because I was here at work. There was a contentious, call it dispute between one of the hosts at MSDNC's Morning Joe, the liberal Mika Brzezinski. She masquerades as a journalist, but she's part of a long line of Democrat Party hacks going back to her father, even who worked as a national security advisor to Jimmy Carter, and he's the man responsible for giving away Iran to the Mad Mullahs, responsible for giving away the Panama Canal, responsible for the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, any number of these things that were diplomatic fiascos. So it runs in the family. She had an argument yesterday morning on air with, of all people, Congressman Raul Labrador of Idaho. You may have heard about this. It's being disseminated this morning by liberal websites across the country. They can't believe how cold-hearted the congressman from Idaho happens to be. Oh, those Republicans and tin ears. They don't believe that government should be your mommy and your daddy. It shows you just how mean-spirited they happen to be. And of course, if you're a liberal, you think that government should coerce people into doing, never mind what the Constitution said, that you had God-given rights and that government was supposed to be small and stay out of your way. Liberals believe government should force you to buy insurance on an Obamacare exchange. Liberals believe that government should force businesses to give away the store in order to make other people happy, make other people's lives easier. This is the dispute, the nub of the discussion yesterday between these two, and I want you to take a listen to it for a couple of minutes. Um, Government, I guess, should take control of all free enterprise. Well, they did it in the Soviet Union with just spectacular results, if you remember. It's a shame that country went away 20-some years ago.
I guess I'll start off with asking you what you have against paid family leave at this point, since you seem to be against it.
Well, I just don't think it's the government's role to give businesses more things to do and to pay for. That's something that a business should decide, and it's not for the government to be telling people about that.
Yeah, we're at the point, though, where it does not exist, and you don't think at this point, I mean, do you think you would like to have paid family leave in your family? Do you think that would be important to perhaps your family moving forward in the best way possible?
It should be up to the businesses. I owned a business for 10 years. I paid for my the insurance for the people that worked for me. I gave them leave whenever they needed leave, and I helped them out. And it should be up to the individual business person to decide that.
So
I
you
just
gave
think
paid family leave in your company?
I gave leave.
You gave leave, but not paid?
Yes. No, yes, I paid for it. I just didn't have, I don't know what your definition of paid family leave.
Well,
but
that would
whenever
be
they
you
had
take leave and you're paid during the time of that leave.
Yeah, whenever they had a family issue, we paid for them. They had vacation, they had sick days, they had a bunch of things. And those things cost me money, and I did it willingly. I don't think the government should be forcing that. I know you want the government to force more spending, but I don't.
She asked him at one point, well, wouldn't you like family leave for your family? Well, what would I like versus what I can have, those are two different things. I would like a 7-bedroom mansion. So when all of my family came, I could fly them here on government expense, I suppose, or force the airlines to do it, to come out here and spend all of the holidays with me. I would like to have the grocery store give me my food for free, especially at the holidays, so that I could feed this big family that's going to come here and stay. We'll just tell the grocery stores it would make me feel better and that I should be entitled to it. And they're just big, greedy corporations anyway, so why shouldn't they be doing it? And all of you out there who actually own a business, you understand, you likely got where you are because you were exploiting somebody, and you're just plainly evil, so you should be giving it all away. As your penance, you should live in poverty in order that your employees can then go out and have 3-4 months to raise their children whenever they feel like doing it. And it could be a man or it could be a woman, but, you should be forced to pay them the money to stay home. Still give them a salary even though they're not being very productive, is what she's saying. I would like a second home, a vacation home in Hawaii. Maybe my employer should pay for that too as well. And then when I go away on family leave for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and I'm still getting a paycheck, I have a place to stay and warm weather to raise my child, my newborn. I would like to win the lottery. Therefore, I think that perhaps the employer should be buying my lottery tickets And if I don't win the lottery, then the employer should provide me the amount of the jackpot I didn't win. At what point do we continue to force people to do things in this country to meet every liberal whim out there? There is no utopia. The Soviet Union tried it. They confiscated everything everybody had, turned around and said, well, now you can stand in line for 2 hours at the store so you can buy burlap toilet paper. That's kind of like emery cloth. But beside that point, where does she get off trying to she's supposed to be, I don't know, maybe she's not objective. It's all of these shows now on cable news channels. They're dominated mainly by opinion hosts. It's funny. The other day, Ted Koppel chews out Sean Hannity for giving opinions on the air and tells him it's bad for America. But when it's a liberal opinion like Mika Brzezinski's, that's somehow good for America? What more should your employer be required to do? Your employer gave you a job and you're getting a paycheck. Isn't that enough? There was a time in this world, I still have friends who are farmers. I grew up in a dairy farming community. That was primarily the big industry in the area. They work 7 days a week. They don't get vacations. In fact, some of my friends wouldn't know what a vacation was, and because they've been working the last 35, 40 years farming, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves if they had a week away from the barn or the fields. And that was the way humanity lived for millennia. Whether you believe the world is 6,000 years old or billions of years old, it's still the way that men and women lived for millennia. And this expectation that, well, I should have an 8-hour day, and I think it's a great thing. A lot of people still don't have it in other parts of the world. Weekends off, I think it's a great thing. I worked for radio stations where we used to have to do 6-day weeks. That was a requirement. But then again, it wasn't like I was lifting heavy bales and breaking out in a sweat doing it. The thing is, all of these expectations, I can remember when I was working as a television news director and I would hire these young people. I was working, I think it was Market 156 at the time. So we weren't getting an older, experienced crowd. We were mainly getting younger folks in their early to mid-20s who were coming in looking for jobs. I would hire them and they'd nod and smile and be so glad they could get the job. Always, of course, looking for the next job as soon as they got that one. But that's not a problem. When you're young, you should have that sort of wanderlust, and people do want to move ahead in life and make more money. I completely understand that. But then as soon as I would hire them, they'd say, well, here are the days off I want. And I always spend Thanksgiving at my grandmother's house in Massachusetts. Well, you may have when you were a kid, but you're not going to do it right now because I need somebody here on air to anchor news on Thanksgiving Day. Well, how dare you? They treat you like you were Simon Legree. I'm sorry, but that's how business works in this country. And you can't have everything you want in life. Labrador is making a very good point. To what degree should businesses become slaves to the state so they can provide, if the state wants to give you family leave, even that would get very, very expensive. But to say that your employer, a private citizen, owes you this, I brought it up the other day, the word entitlements implies that there's some right to all of these things. There's no family leave in the Constitution, not at the state level and certainly not at the federal level. And yet politicians in Washington and liberals especially pushing those politicians have come to accept that word as if you are entitled to all of these things. Would it be nice to have paid family leave? Sure. Again, it would be nice to have cake after every meal. It would be nice to win the lottery. Not just once, but maybe every week. But it doesn't happen. The world doesn't work that way. 8:15, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 45. And it shows you the disconnect. I said yesterday, when it comes to liberals, they don't seem to be able to put two and two together. That is, they have no logical basis for the arguments they make. It's all about what makes them feel good in the bottom of their tummy, and that's why we should go that direction that particular day. I also told you a few days ago that the CBO, they buried it in a projection on page 106 of a report issued. The Congressional Budget Office, which is called nonpartisan, says that within 30 years, officially we are going to have a national debt of $91 trillion. And in a decade, spending on certain programs called entitlements, just 3 of them, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And it's wonderful to get those checks in the mail. It's wonderful to have those things in the background. It's a great safety net. But in a matter of a decade, we're not going to be able to afford to do anything else in this country unless we tax people to the point where they won't be able to buy any other goods and services, which will completely cripple the economy. What part of this can't the left in America see? Why is it so dang difficult for them? I guess they think, well, we've got a printing press. We'll just keep punching out more money. That'll solve it, won't it? Yeah. We'll just print more money, and that way we'll be able to buy anything we want. Well, have you heard of devaluation of currency? It's a little bit like the guy who runs a tavern, and he realizes he might be able to increase the margin, the bottom line, if he pulls that whiskey down when he's after he closed, he pulls that whiskey down off the shelf, and he says, quarter of the bottle's gone. I'm just going to pour some water in there. Well, if he keeps diluting the whiskey becomes less and less, toxic, but less and less alcoholic, and less, well, I don't know that it has any taste. That's probably true. But the people who actually like the stuff will notice the difference. And eventually, all he's going to have is a little bit of whiskey flavor in a bottle of water. It's not the same thing. And so Lefty can't seem to understand. You can't just keep stamping out dollar bills, and they will not have the same value if you keep doing that. If you think you're going to inflate away debt, and then that's all you have to do, does anybody out there in America still have a set of marbles between their ears? They certainly don't in media, in academia, and in places like Hollywood. You've got to wonder, what type of education? Well, let's not go there. We know who educated them. Fellow travelers. I did meet a school teacher. I should point this out. We were doing the show last Friday morning live at the McDonald's in Jerome, and a Jerome school teacher came by, and she said, there are actually a lot of conservatives who work at our school. They don't necessarily talk about it a lot in education much, because it may not necessarily go over with some of the liberals you're working alongside. But I was gratified to at least hear that. Can I point out, too, we got to look at the new playground out there, indoor playground. The grand opening is coming up this week. When I had young children that I had to shepherd, it was always, especially when the weather was cold or nasty, it was always a great place to go. I got a quick note. We do want to point out before we take a short break, I had a good conversation yesterday with the folks from Tripp Family Medicine. We'll be joined by them again next Wednesday morning on the program. That'll be coming up between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. We do it every Wednesday. Tripp Family Medicine is still looking for new patients. And often does not mean always, but often Tripp Family Medicine can see you on the very same day. If you call up with a medical issue and you have need to have someone take a look at you, they can often see you on the very same day. Tripp Family Medicine is located on Fillmore Street in Twin Falls, directly across from the main post office. It's 8:20. It's 45. Not going to get a lot warmer today. Going to get colder, in fact, and much windier. It's spring, after all. Some people are getting so upset with the direction of government being so out of hand and spending us into oblivion. While in Idaho, we had a rejection this year of the Article 5 convention. We'll talk about that in a moment. It's picking up steam. It's a movement picking up steam this week in some other parts of the country. I wanted to mention, I'm hopeful that in the next few weeks, I'm going to be able to tell you that I've dropped 80 pounds. I'm getting really close. I was on the scales the other day, and I'm down another 5 pounds over the last couple of weeks. I've been doing this through something called the Total Body Transformation System. And it's a way to promote healthy weight loss. It's not a yo-yo or fad diet. Developed by a company that's been in business now over 20 years. It has an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau. I've been telling you, too, as well, it's scientifically proven to burn 6 times more fat, and you'll lose 8 times more weight than the normal results from diet and exercise alone. You still get a healthy amount of calories during the course of a day. You're not going to be on I'll call it a death camp diet by any means. You actually still can have some tasty food. And that's the part about it I really, really like. The meal replacement plan, which costs about the same as groceries that you'll be replacing, is often healthier than many of those meals you've been eating. The average participant will drop 22 pounds and lose 4 inches off his or her waist in just 60 days. I wanted to point out, too, as well, You can find out more by giving a telephone call to Don Chandler. Don is at 208-731-3560 right here in Twin Falls. If you'd like more details, get in touch with Don. He's also been a client. He dropped more than 50 pounds himself. And now he just does a little maintenance, going to the workout club now and then, and keeps himself thin. Don's telephone number, one more time, is 731-3560. And I mentioned this Article 5 convention. We had quite a debate about that in Idaho earlier during the legislative session, which, as you know, wrapped up yesterday. Going to be a lot more we'll talk about with that a little later in the program. But the Article 5 convention died a rather inglorious death here. What is that? Well, Congress can call a convention. But if Congress doesn't, states can do it. You need a certain amount of states that come forward and say it's time for a convention. Some people, and some of these are the most prominent conservative voices in America, they're arguing, and this is some of the people, Tom Cole from Oklahoma. You've got other big voices in there too. Mark Levin, the talk show host. And I understand where they're coming from, that they think it's a great idea because they believe they can call it for just one issue, and that is to pass a balanced budget amendment, which nobody in Washington is willing to do. Well, after all, if you do that, then you can't, before Election Day, come out and create some gravy to win another election with. So the notion is that if the states took control and called this convention, they could do it. The fear, though, is from a lot of other conservatives that if this happens, there's no way to stop, and there's differing opinions on this, legal opinions. Some say it can be a one-issue convention. Others say, no, it'll become a runaway convention, and with that, people could be rewriting the entire founding document of this country, and there are liberals out there we know who would like to do that. And if California has proportional representation at an Article 5 convention, along with New York and Massachusetts, you start to see where this might go. Well, this comes from the Resurgent, which is the website founded by Eric Erickson. And a writer by the name of Adam Quasman says this week the Arizona and North Dakota legislatures became the 9th and 10th states in the union to pass the Convention of the States, utilizing the Constitution's Article 5 authority for states to call an amendment convention to pass major reforms in the structure and function of our government. Arizona also passed the Compact for America, joining other member states through an interstate compact to call for an Article 5 convention for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Now, where is this going to go? We may have dodged the bullet in Idaho, but the fact of the matter is, Idaho could be a no on this, and other states, if they get enough of them, could convene this convention, and then Idaho would be a part of it. So the fact of the matter is, level heads here may have decided against this for the moment, but it doesn't spare us if other states eventually, they get enough of them where they decide they can trigger this. And I believe it's only 2/3 are needed to actually put this thing together. I'll add to this, maybe it's true that it could remain just a single issue convention. When I mentioned earlier, though, that there are differing legal opinions on this, the fact of the matter is, until from my perspective, and I think that a lot of the opposition here in Idaho is very similar, if you're going to do this, you need 100% agreement in the opinion that it would remain a one-issue convention. If I had that, I would have backed the whole notion of Idaho getting involved with this. But since you have differing opinions out there, that means if this thing ends up going to a court, you're going to have, and not every judge agrees with everything, and we've seen that definitely in the last few weeks with some of Donald Trump's executive orders. But since we don't have a consensus that it would be just a one-issue convention, then all the more reason to say, I don't know. Because if you're toying with the Constitution and the rewriting of your liberties, even if just 1% of lawyers out there say, well, it could turn into a runaway convention, then I think we need to listen to them before we turn around and throw the baby out with the bathwater. Coming up on 8:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. On this lovely day across the valley, I was thinking about that driving in this morning, and we're told we're going to have a high wind warning, too, as well over the next couple of days. Just a quick note, we will warm up in the middle of next week again. It'll be very much spring-like. It's not going to go away for good. But I do want to remind you that the weather probably for the next few days will make you a little miserable. But into each life a little rain must fall. And the weather is brought to you as a service by Mountain Home Auto Ranch in Mountain Home. And another quick note, too, because of the cold weather coming through the next few days, yes, you may have more use for that furnace, at least for the time being. And we've been telling you, if you are having difficulty, the thing has really had to do a lot of work this past few months. You need to give a call to the folks at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. They'll come out, they'll get the job done right. They'll get it done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric. Should point out the store is located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. You can call them at 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, 678-0459, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. I'll have more news coming up, too. We have a future live show at Ramsey Heating and Electric, and actually, I'll talk more about their involvement with that in the next few weeks as I get more details available.